Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good afternoon. I am Anne Susan Elias. I'm a faculty at the Department of English here in college, and I'm also currently the faculty coordinator of the Alumni Association of College. Let me begin by expressing how happy and excited we are to host the book launch of Shri Inderjit Khanna's autobiography, Flashes Before My Eyes, The Civil Service, and more. As I was reading through Shri Inderjit Khanna's work, I remembered the story that I heard about when I was much younger. The story may be familiar to many of us here. This is the story of a woodcutter who lost his axe in a river. A poor woodcutter. He was so upset, he was distraught that he lost his axe. Seeing his sorrow, the river goddess decided to help him. She came up to him and told him, "I'll help you retrieve it." So she jumped into the river, came back with a golden axe. And the man said, "No, this is not my axe." So she returned again, jumped right back into the river one more time, came back this time around with a silver axe. Again, he said, "No, this is not my axe." She was so impressed. And then she went back again and came back with his old, overused axe. And he said, that's my axe. The story goes that the goddess was so impressed by his honesty that she rewards him with a fortune. But what I'd like to say is, when I was younger, when I heard this story, I thought this was a story which was about honesty. But as I'm growing older, I'm aware that this story represents so much more. The axe and the woodcutter's association with the axe represents his acceptance of his hard work, of his labor, of all the bitterness that may have come his way, and all the experiences that came his way in his life. And I think this is something that all of us can think about. We're all so quick to embrace happiness, but what do we make of all the bitter experiences in life too? And it's a mark of maturity, of being able to understand the value of that experience and to embrace all kinds of it, bitterness, sad ones, happiness, and all of it. It's just like a child not liking bitter gourd because it's so sour, but as you're getting older, you're able to appreciate it much more. Now, why am I talking about all of this? When I was reading Sir's book, I came across this section where he talks about an officer evaluation that he undertook in Jabua district. And out of the many things that he talks about, he says what has been taught to him, that we must not only be honest, but also appear to be honest. And that is just the beginning of this book. The book matures from that, just as I realized it as a young individual. It moves from honesty, grounded in honesty, but moves towards an embracing of all experiences in life. And that, of course, is a long journey, and the book represents that long journey of maturity, humility, hard work, and of course, an embracing of life as is. We have much to learn from this particular book. Once again, we are very, very honored and very happy to be part of this journey through this book launch. By remembering this, let me move into and rather attend to my duty here today, which is to welcome all of you On behalf of the Alumni Association of St. Stephen's College, I would like to extend first and foremost a warm welcome to the author himself, Shri Inderjit Khanna. Please put your hands together. I would like to welcome Shri Manishankar Aiyar, who has been ever so gracious in accepting our invitation and who will be launching the book today. Welcome, sir. And we are also very, very happy to welcome the inspiring Mrs. Shailaja Chandra, who has also joined us today at this event. Of course, Professor Verghese does not need a special welcome, but welcome nonetheless. I would like to also welcome all of us, all of the former students of college, as well as friends and family who are here in person in the college hall, as well as who joined us virtually. Welcome to each and every one of you, and welcome to the junior members who are eagerly here, waiting to listen to all the panelists here. And a special mention and welcome to the fellows of we should put our hands together for them. Fellows from the neighborhood countries who are here with us in college for a duration of time. So welcome to you too. Welcome to each and every one of you once again. Now, to take the proceedings of this event forward, I have here with us a very enthusiastic young junior member. This is Khushi Anupriya Dudi from second year BA program. And she was ever so willing and ever so excited about emceeing this event. So I will hand over to Khushi. Over to you, Khushi.
Thank you so much, ma'am. A warm good afternoon to the eminent guests on the stage and to the wonderful people who have joined us this evening in person and virtually. As you all know, we have gathered here today for the launch of Flashes Before My Eyes, the Civil Services and More. And allow me to begin with a brief introduction of our speakers this evening, although they need no introduction. We are honored to have here with us Shri Inderjit Khanna, author of the book Flashes Before My Eyes, the Civil Services and More. He is the former Chief Secretary of the Government of Rajasthan and a former student of college from the batch of 1964 mathematics. We are also honored to have here with us Shri Manishankar Aiyar, who, as we all know, will be launching this book today. He is former Union Minister and has been a civil servant himself. Shri Manishankar Aiyar is also an alumnus from the class of 1961 Economics. It is also a matter of happiness to have joining us former Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Delhi's first woman Chief Secretary, Mrs. Shailaja Chandra. As we proceed with our function today, I would like to kindly invite Professor John Verghese, Principal, St. Stephen's College, to address us all and felicitate the esteemed panelists.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Khushi. Thank you, Ms. Anne Susan, for your introductions. I want to welcome again each one of you for your presence here. I know traveling through the traffic in Delhi is a task by itself, and I am very grateful for your presence here. It means a lot to me and to all of us here. Thank you very much. As principal, every day I go through a series of very sometimes frustrating experiences. Sometimes it's because of complaints I receive. And recently I got a complaint which was surprisingly not frustrating at all. The complaint was from my librarian. And he came to me and he told me, "Sir, we are having a serious problem here. The shelf dedicated to those authors from college needs to be lengthened a little more, because there are more and more authors from college." And for once, I smiled at that complaint and I was very happy about it. This afternoon, we are very happy and grateful to welcome into our midst Mr. Inderjit Khanna, who is the reason for all of us being here this afternoon. All of you have your varied association and relationships with our author. But for me, I want to go a little further, because I think it is very important for every generation to find out what their predecessors have gone through. Because this young generation, the ones in college now and the ones who are going to come to college, it is very important for them to know and understand the heritage that they have come into. And how do they get to know that? One very good way is through a written document. And I know that this book has taken Mr. Khanna a lot of time and effort. But sir, I want to thank you on behalf of the many generations who are going to read your book and who will benefit from it. There are several chapters in the book, and it's been written in such an interesting fashion that there is something for everyone. If you're from college, there's a little bit about college. If you're from the civil services, or if you're aspiring to join the civil services, there's something for you as well. If you're an administrator, yes, there is a lot for you. If you're a family person, yes, there are nuggets strewn throughout the book where you will find a lot of interesting reading. But more importantly, what I am interested in this particular book is the honesty and the integrity which it puts forward. That, I think, is something that our young people should look up to, and that is something that they should follow. For that, sir, I'm very grateful. I'm also very happy to have in our midst Mr. Manishankar Aiyar and Mrs. Chandra. Very grateful for your time and your presence here, and for the encouragement you provide through your time and your efforts for all of us. Thank you very much. On behalf of all of us here, I would like to make a small token presentation to our esteemed panelists. And sir, may I request you on behalf of all of us here to accept this little bouquet of flowers. All of these are from college. And I hope that will happen. And from all of us to the man who made this evening possible. Sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I request Shri Inderjit Khanna, author of the book Flashes Before My Eyes, The Civil Services and More, to address the gathering.
Professor John Verghese, Principal St. Stephen's College, Mr. Manishankar Aiyar, my senior in college and senior in service, still different service, senior in service. Sharaja, my batchmate, all of you present here, and amongst you all, a very special person. Amandeep Sandhu, Mr. Amandeep Sandhu, my principal, not in my time, but from my school, Sherwood College. He has taken all the trouble to come from Nainital for this event, and I'm most grateful to Amandeep for coming for this event. Thanks to all of you for being present. It is a matter of pride to be invited. I remember in December, when somehow I mentioned this to Professor Verghese in a meeting here, and he said that you must launch it from the college. I said, well, if the college wants me to, it will be a privilege for me to do so. And that's where it all started. I will not talk about the book. I will leave it to Mr. Manishankar and Sharaja if they wish to talk about the book. I will talk about the how and the why. I was not very much inclined to write an autobiography. There were occasional mentions, but I said that it's no use because we always end up blowing our own trumpet, which is not very desirable. On 3rd December 2020, and I'm being very precise, it was a fairly early morning. I was looking at the WhatsApp messages which come to me. Somebody circulated a message of about 3-4 minutes of somebody everybody in this hall knows, Amitabh Bachchan. Amandeep knows about it too well. He said in that brief, there was a clip. So he said 3 things which struck me. One was the sacrifice made by his parents for the 2 boys, Amitabh and Ajita. Gave examples and said the sacrifice was the key word. The second was the emphasis they gave to educating the 2 boys very well. And the third, the education that he, Amitabh, received at Sherwood. It set me thinking that very day that I think in my own family, the situation was quite similar. There were tremendous sacrifices by my parents. Their main focus was educate, and we were 3 of us, the children. No goodies of the time, whatever they may have been. My 2 grandchildren are here. I keep on reminding them that we lived in an environment where there was a little small flat in Daryaganj, everybody knows. No 4-wheeler, no 2-wheeler, no telephone, no refrigerator, no radio. They can't imagine those circumstances. Where did my mother come from? Bengal. Where did my father come from? Punjab. So I thought to myself that, well, Amitabh has said it. I think my circumstances are not different, maybe a little less well off. So I must share with the family, and my sister's grandchildren who are in America probably know even less, and my brother's grandchildren. My main focus was that this generation should know where the roots are. I went along writing it from that day onwards, and come July, when I circulated it to Sharaja, to my cadre mate and friend C.K. Matthew, and to another friend of mine, a colleague from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, Professor T.V. Rao, in their very valuable comments, all 3 said you cannot leave this in a private domain. You must share it and put it in the public domain. Well, I have abided by their instructions, and for better or for worse, I am sharing it in the public domain. I am very happy with the responses I am getting, and it is very, very encouraging for me when people start remembering their parents, tell me incidents of their parents. Some friends like Sharaza tell me incidents about my parents and others. So it is very, very exciting and exhilarating. To an extent, and I think I have shared it in the book, the great facilitation to my having written this book is the diaries I have kept. And I will confess that I have a diary starting somewhere around July 1967 onwards to this day. I have kept them. I never realized why I was keeping them, but I just kept them. It became a habit. I don't know why. And then when I got down to writing, I looked over those diaries. They fill up one full shelf in my cupboard. And things came back to me, memories came back to me, dates came back to me. And my parents also, surprisingly, my mother a little less, my father more, had meticulously kept so many documents which I had not looked at till then. Subhash Dawar is present here, he will remember. And it was very interesting for me to go back and reflect, and helped me a great deal. That's why I was able to finish the first manuscript in about 8 months. The pandemic, of course, facilitated because I was alone at home, nothing else to do, hardly anything else to do. So I would write, as sometimes my daughter, granddaughter, grandson, when they were visiting me, used to accuse me of sitting at the dining table because I had no office as such at home and writing late into the night. But that was it. I want to acknowledge at this stage, though I'm not in Rajasthan and I was an outsider in the state, that I thoroughly enjoyed my work in the state. Pawan Chopra and Chitra are here, I can see them. Pawan succeeded me on his first posting and my first posting at Rajasthan. And it was a delight to work in a state like Rajasthan. I must acknowledge that I am not in Rajasthan, so I don't have to say it before the Chief Minister or anybody else that we were privileged to work in that state. Probably, well, I'm boastful, I will say one of the best states in the country to work in. There may be some flaws, some faults, but we could not have had it better. The politicians were extremely good. You had your ups and downs. There's no doubt. Nobody anywhere can say that he did not have, not fisticuffs, but problems with ministers and such people, sometimes even bosses. But there was always somebody you could look over your shoulder and who would be there to take care of you. Be it a politician and all parties. I have had the good fortune, I should say, somebody may say misfortune, of serving right from the Janata government, Congress of course before that, in 1977, subsequently in different models of the Congress government, later again back to the BJP government, in the government of India, in the BJP government, in the NDA alliances in 96, 97. And I think at all stages, if you had any problem, you always had a protector. There was somebody who saw some semblance of reason in what you were trying to say or do, and who reached out to see that no harm came. I think what most civil servants obviously are apprehensive of is harm which may come to them. One very simple way of harming is transfer. I did have a transfer in 22 days also, not for harm, but apparently because the minister in the district I was to go to wanted me there. I didn't know him. He was given a civil list and told these are the 5 batches, not senior to that and not junior to that. Do what you like, select one. And it so happened, I will tell the principal, that minister's secretary happened to be a Stephen, very senior officer who didn't know me. I didn't know him. For God alone knows from where he picked up my name, and that was the end of the story. But I and my wife had to move from Barmer, which was an unknown commodity. I was just about settling in, to Banswara, right across, different terrains. Border, Barmer, desert, arid, and Banswara, lush green, rivers. But we had to suffer because all the packing and unpacking had to be redone, in any case. But these are things which come along the way and we have to take care of them. Family support is most important. I think it's so in any vocation. And I think particularly for us, in fact, I know I did not, when I was to get married, I told Yasmin, I said that you have done your B.Ed, but I don't think you should work because I am transferable and what will you do? And she agreed. And yet when Sonali was growing up, both of us, Yasmin and I, ensured, well, guided her to educate well, be professionally qualified and work. Of course, she has changed profession from the corporate world to a teacher, but she has continued to teach. And that's how, thinking changes, perceptions change, and circumstances make us change. The college. The school I will not talk about so much. There's in the book, there's a chapter about college. Our motto is at the Gloriam. My school motto is Mera Esprit Parma, which means that each one deserves his own, merit his own prize. In college, it is adding to the glory of God. I was reading another autobiography recently by Mani Bhaumik, and it's called Code Name God. And he talked about the sacrifice of his grandmother, who was very fond of him, in Bengal. He's from Bengal. Now, of course, in America, doing extremely well, who acknowledged that his grandmother, it was the time of the Bengal famine, starved herself to feed this little boy who was uneducated, but for him to survive. And he has acknowledged that the grandmother died because of starvation. That's the type of sacrifice that one finds. If I may, with the permission of those on the dais, mention another autobiography I have read, is by our friend from college and my boss in the finance ministry, Monte Kadwaria, which is by the title of Backstage, another element of sacrifice by his father. His father was in the subordinate account service, defense account service. And when he was being promoted to the All India Defense Account Service, his father said, I will forgo this promotion. Why? Because he knew that if he was promoted into the All India Account Service, the chances of him being posted to small cantonments and places would be to the detriment of his children's education, which they were receiving in Delhi. And Montague has acknowledged in that book this sacrifice, great sacrifice, which enabled him to study in Delhi Public School, to study in St. Stephen's College, move on to Oxford, and so on. So these are the type of sacrifices which the little ones sometimes overlook. They have not been told. I'm not saying we drum it into them, but they must come to realize this. Another thing, sitting in the same hall, I don't think I ever had the opportunity to be on stage. I was not an actor or a debater like Manishankar was, or Sharaja, who may have acted in plays here. So this is a unique opportunity for me. But I remember one thing. When we sat in the assembly, and Sarkar Sahib, who was my teacher in mathematics and my principal, used to address us most mornings, he initiated to me, I was 16, 17 years old at that time, the desire to read Rabindranath Tagore. I had not read Rabindranath Tagore. And I remember Sarkar Sahab from this stage reading out poems like Where the Mind is Without Fear. This is still in my head. Obviously, these things had an impact. That's why I said education has its impact on all of us, and we owe it to our teachers and the institutions where we have gone to. I want to share another example. Pardon me for the little bit of extra time I'm taking of Ranjit Bhatia. All those on the dais know him, many present in the hall know him. Ranjit taught me mathematics from my second year onwards. Great athlete, Rhodes Scholar, represented India on his way back in the Rome Olympics, 800 meters, didn't win the medal, but doesn't matter, represented India. Now, why do I acknowledge this teacher called Ranjit Bhatia, who's no more, but why do I? Somewhere down the line in class, I had forgotten. I must have asked a question which then Ranjit Bhatia did not have an answer to. Mathematics, some equations and theorems and all that. Come 11th February 1962, this was our final year in the BSc. Ranjit, sitting in Jabalpur, I still have that postcard. Principal asked me for the postcard. I said, it's too precious to me just now. I will give you a photocopy, but not the original. He wrote to another one, professor, teacher, Professor Satish Mathur. He said, Inderjit asked, this is sitting in Jabalpur. Inderjit asked me some question, I did not have the solution. Here is the solution line. Now please give it to it. Now, those were our teachers. Great people. Another thing about Sarkar Sahab on the lighter side. Sarkar Sahab, those who may remember him, I don't know whether Pawan had any classes for him. Of course, the teachers in our time always were wearing gowns. Okay, Sarkar Sahab had a habit first of writing on the board, all blackboard, chalk, etc., and then throwing the duster over his shoulder before he turned around. And we would all wait, Babchu is here, wait, where is the duster going to land? Because we have to ensure it doesn't land on our head. So that was Sarkar Sahab. Very serious, but I suppose a little bit of idiosyncrasies were there. Two keywords, and I'll probably end now what I have to say. I think I far exceeded my time. The civil and the service. Service is very simply explained by the Hindi word seva. I don't need to say more. Civil is extremely important. And I'll tell you what is uncivil, and I'm sure you'll understand what is civil. I'm not mentioning names, but it's a real story. It's not even a hearsay. Told to me. The director of a department entered the chief secretary's office. He was asked to come and discuss a matter. And he happened to take the deputy director, a lady, along with him. They both entered. The director was shown a chair and was asked to sit. When the lady deputy director was moving towards the chair, wait, where do you go? Who are you? She started mumbling, and then the director took over and explained that since he dealt with the matter he had brought, was that civil. Now, if at that level this is the approach, then I'm afraid we have gone in the wrong direction. I thank my honorable St. College, the principal, for inviting me. I thank Amandeep for coming all the way from Nainital. I had asked him 10, 12 days ago. Of course, he took 20 books. I hope they are read by somebody there. Of course, the principal for hosting this, for college hosting this. When I rang up Mr. Manishankar Aiyar, he very kindly agreed and reminded me. I said, our days go, college, probably I didn't know him so well. He was in a different world by himself, senior to me. And then, of course, he went off into foreign service. But we came close in our official life when the constitutional amendments were being drafted in the late 80s by Mr. Rajiv Gandhi's government. And Mani Shankar used to come from, and Wajahat, both Stephanians, by the way. Wajahat was in Jaipur recently. And they used to come to my secretary's room and we used to sit. When I reminded Mr. Mani Shankar of this, he said, no, it is Mr. Balbir Singh who initiated my thought process into this issue of the Panchayati Raj institutions and the need for their strengthening. This is where the teacher goes back and the student. So I thank you all very much for being present today, and I apologize for having taken more time than I should have. Thank you all very much once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Here comes the much awaited moment of this evening. I request Shri Mani Shankar Aiyar to kindly unveil the book. I request the esteemed guests to kindly hold the book for a photograph. Thank you, everyone. I invite Mrs. Shailija Chandra to speak a few words and read select excerpts from the newly launched book.
My batchmate Titch, thank you for doing me the honor of inviting me to speak today. I hope your audience, who know much more about you than I would be able to really regale them with, enjoy what I have to say. Mr. Aiyar, it's good to know that Titch acknowledges your role and the role of many other people in bringing what was perhaps the most epoch-making constitutional amendment of this country, the 73rd and 74th Amendments. I think those are one of the most important things that happened in Indian history. And Principal Varghese, I should have taken your name first. It was a pleasure to meet you. I hope we meet again. Friends, I think I don't trust my ability to speak extempore anymore. I know that I can, but I don't want to miss out on some of the things that this book stands for. And I'm grateful for being given this opportunity to share some of the things, some which Titch may not like very much, so please do hang on. By now, we have grown accustomed to seeing life in a particular way. Some of us look at current events in terms of fables or stories from children. While some of us discuss war in geopolitical and military terms, others measure losses and gains purely in economic terms. And then there are others who find solace in a small human interest stories which bring to life happenings we can relate to. Largely, Titch's autobiography falls in the last genre. And quite unlike books penned by civil servants, it is grounded in the everyday ups and downs of an honest, hardworking officer, a devoted son, a wonderful parent, a brother, and to all of us, a sincere friend. The book has no stories of triumphs, no exposés or claims about changing the face of India. Here, in fact, are everyday stories that knit together in a pattern. Titch's youth and childhood, life in the IAS in Rajasthan cadre, and postings in Government of India blended in one shade of wool, while the other skein of wool neatly tells his family story: births, deaths, baptisms, confirmations, illnesses, joys, and the inevitability of tragedies. Right through both skeins of wool run one common theme. Titch repeatedly thanks the Lord for all the blessings he has received. He traces his lineage over 10 generations, depending on the version of his godfather, Ino Mamu, who joined the UP cadre of the IAS. This gentleman, having distinguished himself by flunking the Tehsildar service exam, got selected for the IAS. Titch's father was born into a Hindu family from Amritsar, but converted to Christianity while still a child. He describes his father often, a clerk working on a salary of 35 rupees a month. In 1959, on his retirement, his father's pension was fixed at rupees 122 per month, which was the year Titch also joined St. Stephen's College. About his mother, he writes, "Mummy was educated only till class 6, but being reasonably proficient in English, was a primary school teacher in Lahore and later for a while in Delhi. But her homilies ring true, which Titch says she told the younger generation when she was 77, which is my age. I don't think I would have the courage to say any of these things to the two grandchildren I have. She said, as small children, we were taught that we must not hanker after wealth, but be content with what we have. For riches have advantages and disadvantages, and poverty gives much pain. The best in life for all mankind is food, just enough to eat and live comfortably, not too much or too little. My daily prayer for all the 3 small families of Arati, that's Titch's sister, Ronajit, his brother, both no more, and Inder, which is Titch, is that they may have enough to live and enjoy, and pray and thank thee for thy help." Now I come to the chapter on Sherwood College. Titch describes his boarding school years, starting with how he was admitted into this prestigious hill school, plucked out of a vagrant life of gully danda in the back lanes of Daryaganj. He explains how his family and the school managed to pay Sherwood's fees, his parents only contributing a fifth of the monthly cost, the rest shared by 2 benefactors. It was his PT teacher at Sherwood who christened him Titch, a name that has stuck over 7 decades, including within the entire group of IAS batchmates. There's not a single batchmate who calls him Inderjit or Inder. Everyone knows him as Titch. His descriptions brought back memories of my own boarding school, Tara Hall in Simla, and the similarities in the daily timetable and the emphasis that boarding schools then brought on truth, on competitiveness, but also teamwork, sportsmanship, but also the dignity of labor. Titch writes, a considerable portion of the Sherwood chapter has fond reference to his close association with the megastar Amitabh Bachchan, a schoolmate, a classmate, and a friend. Throughout his description, Titch refers to Amitabh's bond school friends like Titch. He even included Titch's whole family and relatives in his welcome to his home in Mumbai. At a reunion of Sherwood College, Titch writes, Amitabh hugged each classmate affectionately. Though he has not met some of us since we left school 50 years ago, he recognized all 15 of us. This shows his love for the institution and his desire to meet old friends of his class. Indeed, a lesson for those who forget to value that the closest of all relationships outside the family are the bonds forged in school and college. He also recounts several nuggets about the 5 years spent at St. Stephen's College, but laments, the college has produced many a stalwart who has made a mark in the diverse areas, but for some reason has not got autonomy. Explaining autonomy, remember he was secretary of the University Grants Commission himself, so he knows what all this is about. Explaining autonomy, he says, for autonomy, a college must apply for the same to the university and the UGC. In the case of St. Stephen's College, which is a public perception, recognized as one of the leading colleges in the country, the university, the university forwarded the application to the UGC, which in turn appointed a committee of experts around May 2017. To the best of my knowledge, writes Stitch, the committee, after visiting the college, recommended for grant of autonomy to the college. The UGC has been unable to take a decision in the matter for nearly 4 years now, probably more like 5. To my knowledge, there are already about 700 colleges in India, mostly in the South, which have so far been granted autonomy by the UGC, he writes. As a tribute, he writes, I am indebted to Sherwood and subsequently to St. Stephen's College in whatever I have been able to achieve in my 41 years of public service as a civil servant. After pursuing several other options, Stitch joined the IAS. Training stories at LBS NAA, that is Labasna as it is now called, are followed by numerous accounts from his long career. After reading the chronicle, I conclude that Titch followed a dead honest path, never jockeying for postings despite winning the equestrian medal in the academy. He seemed to have generally got on with almost all his bosses, and those include at least 4 chief ministers, union ministers, and secretaries. Having listened to the unending woes of many officers, what is remarkable is how willingly Titch accepted every assignment without chanting the usual problems of spouse's job, children's education, or aged parents, many of which are genuine problems, but which many officers pull out as soon as a difficult posting is on the cards. But not so Titch, not once. His late wife, Yasmin, although a qualified teacher, never took up a job which was entirely Titch's decision. You heard him just now. She greatly contributed to giving Titch security on the domestic front, enabling him to adjust to transfers and assignments across Rajasthan, but also to undertake a 2-year assignment to IIM Ahmedabad, the University Grants Commission, and holding tough assignments like Special Secretary in the Economic Affairs Department, the Director Enforcement, and finally Chief Secretary Rajasthan. His daughter Shonali changed schools 6 times, and there even was a time when his wife was almost running an old age home, looking after Titch's parents and her own mother under one roof. At one stage, Titch's mother and Yasmin's mother both shared one room in Titch's house, and his only child, Shonali, had to make do behind a partition of cupboards next to the kitchen. This would be a study in domestic management, to which credit goes to Yasmin entirely. Several times the book recounts the financial difficulties he must have faced and how every opportunity had to be found to increase one's income legitimately. To pay for something like his wife's fare to accompany him to the Colombo Plan training in UK, Titch had to take recourse to an anachronism called privilege leave to enable him to encash an extra 30 days of leave. It makes one's blood boil as one sees the extraordinary privileges that present groups of officers enjoy and take for granted. While in Rajasthan, Titch undertook touring almost relentlessly, whether it was to each one of Rajasthan's 26 districts then, or the vast interiors inhabited by tribal people. His meeting Yasmin and marrying her, however, have been described more as a milestone than a romance. But his extreme devotion to Yasmin and his loving care during her illnesses and her last days excuse what I now read from his book, which made me question his decision. He writes, when Yasmin and I decided to get married, I told her that I would not like her to work because mine was a transferable job and there was no certainty of tenure at any place of posting. She did not oppose this view of mine and therefore never worked. Of course, she developed many interests like gardening, music, reading, cooking, which kept her quite busy. Yasmin had her hands full with the house guests, he writes. He would invariably accompany me on my tours, which involved night halls in various small towns and villages. She had a special box made which carried our groceries, utensils, and other food items. There was also the looking after of my mother, my father, her mother in their old age over a long period from 1978 to 1997. That's a pretty long time. She never once complained on this account. At one point in time between 86 and 88, Ronajit's two daughters, Shamona and Kavita, who came to live with us in Delhi while they were studying in college and school respectively. All this Yasmin did very lovingly, he writes. In retrospect, he does, however, add, I cannot say whether I was right or wrong in asking Yasmin not to work. However, when Shonali was growing up, we were both keen that she should be duly qualified and work even after marriage. Clearly, my thinking had changed over time. Even today, I do feel that girls should also be brought up and educated so that they work and are economically, financially independent. Well, all this sounds as though Titch is conceding a woman's right to work after first stereotyping her into domestic pursuits. I don't know whether St. Stephen's had a hand in this, because in our time, it was not a co-educational institution. I have acted on this stage, I have participated in debates on this stage, but I also won a prize in this, thank you. I won a prize in this very hall at a debate where the topic was set by the St. Stephen's Debating Society, and the topic was, hold your breath, women go to college less to pursue learning than to learn pursuing. It speaks volumes about mindsets in the days before Stephania turned poet. I do not intend to dwell on all the chapters in the book, but without question, Titch should be canonized for the hardships he underwent without complaint. To give just one example, because of the unwillingness of a certain vice chancellor who had refused to move out of a house earmarked for the Tribal Area Development Commission in Udaipur, Titch found himself homeless. For 3 months, 3 adults, Titch, his wife, and Yasmin's mother stayed in one room in the circuit house, and Shonali was sandwiched somewhere between them. A ferocious upholder of rights myself, I wonder why Titch continued to subject his family to such unacceptable levels of discomfort. After 4 long months, Titch got his earmarked house, but surprisingly, he expresses no anger, no bitterness. He even turns his daughter's stomach ailment caused by the Udaipur Circuit House water to an advantage by befriending the local pediatrician who became their lifelong friend. If that isn't sainthood, what is? Titch's narrative also described his experience when he was ensconced in the Department of Economic Affairs, the most sought after posting for IAS officers. Titch gives some insights, but he steers clear of naming the 2 finance secretaries and 3 finance ministers he worked with. He gives nothing away except telling us that 2 of the finance ministers always addressed me as Inderjit. The third always addressed me as Mr. Khanna. The reader can easily decide which salutation was more endearing. Obviously, the more endearing salutation created an environment more conducive to one's work, writes Titch. It took me 3 minutes on Wikipedia for me to ferret out that the 3 FMs were Manmohan Singh, P. Chidambaram, and Yashwant Sinha. I leave the audience to guess who created a not so conducive environment for Titch, or you can ask him over tea. As for the 2 finance secretaries, I can tell the audience they were Vijay Kelkar and Montek Singh Ahluwalia. As Chief Secretary Rajasthan, Titch, like all CSs in the country, must have had to climb many mountains. I had to also, even in a place like Delhi. Certainly, small as it might sound, every CS faces a tussle of choosing popularity versus playing fair. A chief secretary writes the annual confidential reports of the top ranks, not only of the IAS, but of the All India services in the state, the Indian Police Service and the Forest Service. Titch writes, being the captain of a team is not a bed of roses. There are times when you annoy your friends and colleagues, but as they say, you still must lead by example. Let me recollect one here, that of promotion to the highest post in each of the 3 All India services, the IAS, the IPS, and the Indian Forest Service. As CS, you are rubbing shoulders with officers of each of these 3 services daily. They are a major part of your team. Can you afford to annoy some of such colleagues? You would not like to, but sometimes you may have to be able to send a proper message to all other employees in the state. So he went ahead and in the case of all three services, stopped the practice of promoting officers in contravention of the cadre promotion rules. As he writes, my decision did create animosity, but I feel that it sent an appropriate message down the line. Today, these Government of India instructions, he laments, are being observed more in the breach, resulting in a top-heavy administration with no beneficial results. I feel a little envious that Titch got to work for the most part with politicians who were giants and in whose case probity and the need for development were never in question. All politicians need hardworking, honest officers, and Titch was fortunate to have sensible, development-minded CMs and ministers like Bhairav Singh Shekhawat, Haridev Joshi, and Ashok Gehlot. He was happy to receive a good chit from all his bosses, and he faithfully retained all the letters of appreciation and even reproduced them for readers. He also got the opportunity of spending some time with the future Prime Minister of India, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who seems to have liked Titch and trusted him. My career, like so many colleagues I know, and unlike Titch's, had more than a share of ups and downs. And cabinet ministers at the center often used every ploy to bring me and some other colleagues to heel. Titch has not faced the ingenuity of wily ministers or been unfairly hounded for resisting what was not just irregular, but completely illegal. Some of us were made into scapegoats and continue to suffer even today. Titch's stories are a civil servants, and I want to say this is not a pejorative. This is for everybody who has read Winnie the Pooh or who has not read Winnie the Pooh. That is a masterpiece of writing for children, which brings out not on the surface, it's a story of a teddy bear, but the background is the qualities that were brought for a child to understand through the book. And in my view, and I'm praising Titch for this, I'm not putting him down, this book is more like Winnie the Pooh, and Winnie the Pooh for civil servants. And despite the absence of stories of humiliation and backstabbing, which abound in most civil servants' memoirs, the attributes that one associates with Winnie the Pooh are this is one of the greatest masterpieces, and they are all too evident in Titch's stories. Positive thinking, showing empathy and gratitude, simple living, and finding time to celebrate every major event in the family, which too is a responsibility. That brings me to the greatest of Winnie the Pooh's qualities, making and keeping friends. The book is full of stories of friendships forged not just with individuals, but with entire families that any careerist ought to learn from. He ends on a somber note. Minor skirmishes apart, the Lord above sustained, guided, and protected me. My interactions with the best in academia at IIMA and the UGC were rewarding experiences. If I were to be asked which career I would choose if I was 23 years old again, I would without doubt say the civil service. About his family, he concludes, Mummy and Daddy sacrificed their all in bringing us up and in giving us the best education. As years went by, my understanding and love of my parents grew. I can hope that Yasmin and I were able to do something in terms of caring for them and for Yasmin's parents in their sunset years. Arati and Ranajit were anchors for me, giving me all the support that I required. And then there was Yasmin, who came into my life for 50 years and sustained and supported me throughout ungrudgingly. The Lord gave us a princess by the name of Shonali, who joined with Bipin to give us two darling grandchildren, Annette and Joshua, who are here today. May the Lord continue to bless them in the years to come. End Titch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I request Shri Manishankar Aiyar to address the gathering.
Respected Principal, Professor John Verghese, my colleagues on the podium, Srimati Shailaja Chandra and Shri Inderjit Khanna, Stephanians past and present. Perhaps I should take special note of fellows who have come from other countries of South Asia, and above all, Anne and Kushi, who have been organizing this program for us. Greetings to all of you. I'm so inordinately proud of being a Stephanian that I've often made outrageous remarks about people from other colleges. And on one occasion, one of the distinguished predecessors of Professor Verghese had to go by foot all the way to a neighboring college to apologize on my behalf for an outrageous remark that I had made about them. But that's the problem with belonging to an outstanding college. Why should one have to hide one's light under a bushel? In